Exobiology is definitely the highest paying activity in Elite, especially now that the Thargoids have packed it in, and it's an activity that you technically do in a suit, even if only for a few seconds at a time. So for completion's sake, you may find yourself wanting a fully upgraded Artemis suit with all the trimmings. Extra sprint duration, extra battery, better tool battery usage, better jetpacks, maybe even night vision. So you'll glance over at the suit engineers you need to unlock all of that, and oh my god, that's ridiculous, who gives a shit. Fortunately, there's a shortcut to bypass all of that. Well, almost all of it. You still need to get all the materials for the upgrades, and about 20 rare data packets. More on that later. But here's the one neat trick to skip the entire suit engineer ladder. Colonia. Sure, it's way the hell out there, about a third of the galaxy away, but we're exobiologists, and by the same token, we are explorers. You'll find yourself there at some point, eventually. Honestly, half the times I end up there, it's kinda on accident because I went exploring and realized I was now closer to Colonia than the bubble. So maybe before your next exploration trip, you might want to get your ducks in a row and come home with all the suit engineering you could ever want. Colonia is a haven for engineering, both for suits and ships. FDev wanted people to be able to live in Colonia almost exclusively, so it has fewer engineers that are all individually capable of more upgrades. But they also knew that it would be asking too much to require explorers to just complete the entire engineer ladder all over again, so instead the unlock requirements are fast-tracked. The only downside is that it took you like 2 to 3 hours to get out here in the first place. You can get all the engineering mats for ship engineering from HGEs and hackable data ports, and then trade them over. That's inconvenient, but feasible. The only way that Colonia is really shafted these days is that you are most definitely not going to find the Titan drive components you need for that pre-engineered SCO FSD this far from the bubble. For suit and weapon engineering, however, you can get everything you need in Colonia just fine. There's more than enough stations and settlements. But I do recommend gathering all your materials in the bubble first before heading out. Colonia is definitely more limited in scope, but for the record, I did gather the materials for a grade 5 fully modified Karma L6 out there, so it is feasible. 2 of the 4 suit engineers in Colonia are pretty much free to unlock. The other 2 being frustrating at times, but still way better than back home. Eleanor Bressa is easy to unlock. Just land at 5 settlements in Colonia, get out, and stretch your legs for a bit. You can pretty much automate this process with Apex shuttles at a trivial cost of credits. Some people express difficulties in getting the visits to count, but my recommendation is to always find and get scanned by a guard at each settlement before you leave. Then simply log out and back in, and you should have your invite. That's what worked for me. Also, make sure they're all settlements in the Colonia system, not the Colonia region. The wording is vague. I think this might be where a lot of the complaints come from. Bressa's referral requirements are to provide 10 digital designs. These data packets are pretty easy to get and are available from mission rewards, but they will also drop from grinding methods I will explain shortly. Bressa provides combat-focused modifications exclusively. Damage resistance and faster shield regen are excellent for Dominator suits, and magazine size and reload speed are basically best in slot for any weapon type. And she offers all of these, should you have the stomach for on-foot combat. Stowed reload is also excellent for the Karma L6, especially if you use 2 at a time. Baltanos legitimately freaks me out because he's some kind of cultist.
Blessings of the merged upon you.
But he's super easy to unlock. You just need to reach friendly status with the Colonia Council. Generally, you will be able to instantly hit allied with the Colonia Council just by handing in the exploration data you scooped up on the trip out there. You can do this at Colonia Orbital or Dove Enigma. Don't do it at Jack Station. Gandarvi on the Blue Star Line is also an option. A minor speed bump is that if you were already allied with them prior to owning Odyssey, then you will need to complete a mission for them in order to receive his invitation. Any mission will do. Maybe even just handing in more cartographic data would work. I didn't try that. Once again, if you fulfill the conditions but don't get the invitation, just relog from the main menu and it should show up. Baltanos provides increased sprint duration and improved jump assist. Both very tempting upgrades for an Artemis suit, and increased sprint duration is actually on all 3 of my suits, because who wants to wait around? I'd recommend against getting increased air reserves. You only start drinking O2 from the reserve tank once your battery is depleted. you get much more value just from having a bigger battery. And, in my opinion, if your reserve O2 is getting pulled from it all, you've seriously screwed up. Plus, you can usually just eat a power cell to recharge your battery, and improved battery capacity will give you better value for that too. In practice, you don't need to spend much time on foot, especially if you brought an SRV, and SRVs recharge your battery for free just by boarding them. Baltano's referral requirements are to provide 10 faction associates, once again to be covered in a moment. Rosa Dayet's unlock requirement is to sell 10 cocktail and/or culinary recipes to a bartender in Colonia. Interestingly, you can mix and match, so you can sell 6 cocktail and 4 culinary recipes, or any combination, so long as the total comes to 10. Most importantly, these need to be sold to bartenders in the Colonia system, not the Colonia region. I recommend using the bartender at Jacques Station. That's the one that worked for me. Safe to assume that fleet carrier bartenders don't count. The process is a little hair-raising because these recipes are very hard to get your hands on, and you won't receive immediate confirmation that your sale counted, as you will once again need to log out and back in to get your invitation. Rosa offers improved battery capacity and improved tool battery consumption. Improved battery capacity is functionally the best a man can get on a suit regardless of the circumstances. Improved tool battery usage is more or less pointless on a Dominator suit though. Many people kinda come to blows over whether or not the scope modification actually does anything, but stability is a solid option for pretty much any weapon. Rosa Dayet's referral requirement is 10 manufacturing instructions. A hefty price as these are used for literally every single upgrade if I'm not mistaken, but they are also available from mission rewards, so it's not complicated. Yi Shen is unlocked by meeting the referral requirements of all 3 of these prior engineers, and he's needed for the night vision modification, which I'll talk about later. He also has some stealth-associated upgrades, but since unlocking him requires 10 manufacturing instructions, faction associates, and digital designs, it might not be worth your time. Now, where to get these cocktail/culinary recipes? Well, thankfully it's at the same place as the faction associates data, and digital designs also drop there too. I may release this next section as a separate video just for search engine optimization, since in my personal research the guides available were either not very helpful or too buried to find. I pretty much had to come up with this on my own. All 4 of these data types drop from data ports in habitat structures. Bars at settlements contain these data ports, but each settlement usually only has 1 bar, and each bar only has 1 data port. For the most part, they are in cabins, which are always locked, and the data usually triggers an alarm, which means it's best to get this data from abandoned settlements. We'll go to Anara and look up tourism economy settlements with anarchy government. These locations are usually completely abandoned. The good news is that nothing you do here will be considered illegal. The bad news is that the data ports require the base's main power to be up in order to access. You can't just jumper cable them with your power transfer tool. If the location isn't abandoned, the good news is that everything just got a lot faster. The bad news is that you'll be fighting waves and waves and waves of guards and civilians basically every second. The process is simple. First, check the bar's data port to confirm that data is currently spawning on the settlement. Then, kill everything that moves. Clone yourself a grade 2 or 3 security profile, and ransack all the data ports. Since you're doing this loop in order to get combat gear that is worth a damn, you'll probably prefer abandoned settlements. They take longer, but there's little combat involved. Before you start, you can just jumper a console and check how many habitat data ports there are in the settlement. Anything less than 6, I'd say don't waste your time. From there, you'll need to power up the main reactor. That will take 2 things: an E-breach and a power regulator. You get the regulator back at the end of the process, so it's not too bad, but it does take 2 minutes to reclaim, which really slows down the process. If you don't have E-breaches, you can buy them in Anarchy or Communist systems from Pioneer Supplies, or if someone has Pioneer Supplies in their carrier, they can turn on their sale by default. I have it enabled on my carrier so that I can just buy them without having to search out the right type of station, and if you have a fleet carrier, that convenience is definitely worth the cargo hold space. Plus, we're exobiologists, so even with all the trimmings, my fleet carrier is paid up for the next 5 years. Break into the main reactor by cutting the panel and overloading the door. Then plant an E-breach on the reactor panel and insert the power regulator into the regulator housing. Then turn it on. This'll take like 30 seconds, but doesn't need any more input from you, and you can head out and start breaking into houses. You'll be fumbling through the layout at first, but after a few runs you'll have all the data port positions committed to memory. Don't forget to check the port in the bar, that's basically free real estate. The recipes and faction associates have a fairly low drop rate, which can be annoying, but you'll be able to find all three here along with digital designs. Don't download anything you don't need, it'll just increase the download time, and your suit has a limit to the amount of data that it can carry at one time. Once you've scraped all the data ports, head back to the main reactor and initiate the main power shutdown. This will take 2 minutes, so you can feel free to trigger this a little early and continue scrounging while it works. What this does is get you back your power regulator. Don't forget to collect it before you leave. They aren't super easy to replace. If the reactor has a power station data port, this is a good time to try and scum some reactor output review data. It will definitely finish downloading before the power shuts off. In order to reset the settlement, you'll need to climb to escape mass lock and then enter Super Cruise. Once you're in Super Cruise, it will reset, and you can turn around and start all over. I recommend dropping Super Cruise as soon as you're able, and then using Flight Assist off to flip over and boost back downwards towards a settlement. You should be like 14 kilometers away. Believe me, it's faster than reaching orbital cruise and maneuvering the glide. If you become logged out for literally any reason, all the data ports will become empty and there will be no loot. This can also happen at random for no discernible reason, and will require hitting Super Cruise to reset. Odyssey is just like that. Also, while I was doing this loop for the data packets, I noticed that absolutely zero assets or goods were spawning in containers, even though the data was there. Some part of the loot system was just fundamentally broken. That's pretty normal. These data ports are always illegal to access in occupied settlements, and are usually within view of civilians who will instantly call for guards. And since we have no way of dealing with guards other than to shoot them in the face, this will usually mean racking up like 3 points of notoriety, which means you can't clear your bounty for 6 hours of in-game time. I don't recommend it. Anarchy settlements are the only sane way to get these data types. If there is a way to gather data this rare in these quantities without scumming around these abandoned settlements, FDev certainly hasn't made it public knowledge. I honestly don't know what they were thinking. In Elite Dangerous' grand tradition of not making any goddamn sense and shoving combat content down our throats, sometimes pirates will teleport in from nowhere and attack you for no reason. I recommend bringing a ship with fairly strong shields that is also fitted with dumbfire missile racks. If you have an Executioner and/or Tormentor, you can just sit beneath your ship as its shields soak up all the damage and pick them off from a distance. Or take off with your ship and blast them with some good old Helldivers fire support. Since this is an anarchy settlement, no bounties, no fines, no notoriety, easy peasy. This can take a while. It took me basically all night, but it's still not that long. In fact, I was able to get the materials needed for 3 Grade 5 fully upgraded suits and a fully upgraded Executioner and Tormentor in just 5 days. Albeit by dropping several $100 million on buying Odyssey materials from fleet carrier Bartenders, which I highly recommend. I can virtually guarantee you that these recipes and faction associates will not be for sale at fleet carrier Bartenders. They are way too difficult to find for how much we are able to charge for them. I got really lucky and was able to buy like 50 manufacturing instructions from some carrier I can't remember. Whoever you are, I love you. Any cost and credits that a bartender is asking is honestly worth it. It's almost charity for them to put up these listings because it lets you get on-foot materials by doing in-ship content, which is always better. You can use an aura to find bartender listings for all these materials. I can't guarantee you all these materials will have listings. In fact, most won't, which is why this next section is how to get them yourself in the most painless way possible. You're going to want to do courier or salvage missions of the legal variety. Most missions offered in any station's concourse will be illegal, but they are not worth it. Killing guards on foot will actually earn you notoriety. It is to be avoided. Courier missions are simple. Just go to the specified location, look up the mission-related individual, and then talk to them. You can use Apex shuttles so that you can do this in the background and quasi-automate the process. Zero risk, zero effort, just a time sink. Salvage missions will be frustrating at first until you know how they work. You get a location to go to, and when you arrive, there's about an even chance that pirates will either be present or drop in on you once you approach. In both circumstances, you simply want to fire dumbfire missiles at them until they are all dead. Do not shoot at the dropship. Those are innocent in the eyes of the law for some stupid reason, and this will incur a fine or even a bounty. What can I say? Odyssey content is undercooked. Oh, and you may need e-breaches to get into the container that has the mission critical item. You can get all the materials needed for the upgrades themselves just by doing these two types of missions. Only the data packets for recipes and faction associates are unavailable for mission rewards. Depending on your personal taste for on-foot combat and upgrade state of your gear, you can speed this process up by taking on legal combat and assassination missions. But those will be really rough without being fully kitted out, and they can be pretty awful with how they work at times. You can skip a bit of the early upgrades by buying pre-engineered suits and guns from Pioneer Supplies. These are distributed randomly all over and refresh on Thursdays. The highest grade you can get in this way is grade 3, however, and the chances of getting the mods you want are pretty slim. Notably, you cannot replace modifications on suits or weapons, so if a pre-engineered suit has modifications you don't want, then it's basically trash. Weapons get dramatically stronger at higher grades regardless of modifications, and importantly, you do not need any engineers unlocked to upgrade your suits and weapons. I recommend upgrading all your gear to grade 5 before heading out to Colonia, so that you can slot everything nicely into place once you're there. In terms of figuring out what materials you need, Inara has a crafting list tab which will give you an itemized list of missing components and hot links to their sources and possible carrier listings. It will also tell you what materials you can trade at NPC bartenders to fill in the gaps. Only assets can be traded in this way, but if you have missions available for high-price items like optical lenses or titanium plating, then getting that instead becomes a viable alternative to waiting for the actual item you need to become available from a mission reward. For the Artemis suit, my personal recommendations for modifications are improved jump assist, increased sprint duration, improved battery capacity, and improved tool battery consumption. It'll help you move faster, and you can spend more time on foot and scan more grass before your battery runs out. A higher grade Artemis suit has almost no practical benefit, just stronger shields which you will probably never turn on anyway. However, it does have to be a higher grade to get these modifications. They really aren't necessary for exobiology, it's just a moderate comfort increase, and maybe saving a bit of time here or there. It's also nice to see your battery go down by 4% instead of 10% when scanning Stratum. Night vision is unnecessary in my opinion, and in my time grinding exobio to elite, I never experienced a life form that existed exclusively on the dark side of a planet. Although it might be useful on planets with weak sunlight, SRVs have night vision anyway. If you really want night vision, I'd do a suit with the modifications listed prior, and then a second suit upgraded to grade 2 with the night vision slotted in, and then only move over to that suit when you happen to find yourself somewhere dark. Do note that night vision is the hardest modification to unlock from engineers. You'll need to unlock Yi Shen for it, and even back in the bubble, it's from an end-of-the-line engineer, probably the hardest one to unlock in the entire game. One place you might want night vision is on a Maverick suit. My recommendations for the Maverick suit's modification are sprint duration, improved battery, improved tool usage, and night vision. In my experience, the majority of salvage missions end up taking place on the dark side of a planet, or on a planet with weak sunlight, so it's just about the one place you'd actually want it. Although, if you actually want to do stealth missions, you'd probably want a Maverick suit with quieter footsteps and weapons with audio masking and noise suppressor. Maybe extra backpack space if you find yourself limited by that often. I've never found it to be an issue. As for the Dominator suit, I recommend damage resistance, faster shield regen, increased sprint duration, improved battery capacity. You really can't go wrong with improved battery capacity and increased sprint duration. But if you're double fisting Karma L6s, maybe swap out sprint duration for ammo capacity. Ammo isn't exactly scarce though. Ammo sources are almost always infinite, and your SRV and ship print ammo for free. Now for weapons. I'd say you want to get yourself an Executioner, Tormentor, and Karma L6. Honestly, what matters most for guns is their grade, and their modifications are barely noticeable. but for the Executioner and Tormentor, I recommend reload speed, magazine size, faster handling, and stability. The Karma L6, I'd say reload speed, magazine size, faster handling, and stowed reload. You can carry 2 Karma L6s and hot swap them out using stowed reload in order to have an incredible damage output at the cost of basically all your ammo, if you're into that sort of thing. The way that headshot damage mods are gate-kept to more difficult to unlock engineers might lead you to believe that it's the strongest modification. And I'm sure it was intended to be very strong, but unfortunately FDev screwed up the combat design and instead it's functionally worthless. Damage that you deal to enemies with a shield cannot overflow into their health bar, which means that pretty much no matter what, you have to shoot every combatant twice, and the Executioner and Tormentor are capable of two-shotting practically all enemies I've faced without even going for a headshot. I think the Karma L6 can one-shot enemies through shields due to its explosive damage type, but since it's a rocket launcher, we're not really concerned about headshots now, are we? Speed-running on-foot engineering was definitely one of the weeks of my entire life. And while it was absolutely obtuse, frustrating, and poorly designed, it's all over now, and I don't have to do it again. And quite frankly, now that I have a fully upgraded combat and salvage suit, the Odyssey combat doesn't feel too bad. It was obviously designed assuming that you were at max upgrades from the jump, with absolutely no consideration given to how it might feel to actually climb the ladder to get to those upgrades. I still don't have any of the bubble suit engineers unlocked aside from Domino, and I don't plan on unlocking them. Colonia was a godsend. And while I was definitely pulling my hair out a bit getting those faction associates, it still beats doing 10 conflict zones and reactivation missions and 6 covert heists. Whatever the hell those are. Also, I don't have to needlessly tank my reputation with Sirius Corporation. Honestly, what the hell is even that? Wow, I'm uncharacteristically salty and have negative opinions after having dipped a toe into Odyssey content. How original. Sorry if I let my inner Yamix out for a minute. I'm currently pretty deep into the research phase of an exhaustive guide on exploration and exobiology, but since it's looking like the Mandalay won't be releasing for credits until late March, don't hold your breath.